10:30? Yeah, okay.
Half an hour?
Yeah, that's right. So we get a little bit of a stretch, get some blood moving, and then we'll do some more again. Yeah. So do any of you participate in Indian dance? Either classical dance or Bollywood type stuff? Okay. So my wife and I do twice a week Zumba and dance fitness. Because you go to the gym, right, and there's somebody moving up front, and it's great because they're usually doing things that it's hard to follow. And so it's a way to work out without feeling bored because you're like, am I moving this way or this way? And then by the time you figure it out, the dance class is over and you were all fit now. But yeah, so I recommend that if you want. Okay, let's sit down again and we'll try a little more. We'll try 30 more minutes. Cameraman is happy? What happened to cameraman? He's coming. Do I need to wait?
Huh?
Do I need to wait on him?
No, actually, he's coming. No, this recording.
So we're good?
Yes.
Okay. I just don't see a camera. But, okay, so I'll keep going. So there's this term HAT. And depending on whom you ask, it's human agent teaming, human AI teaming, or human autonomy teaming. It's a new field, so it's sort of growing, right? There's also human-robot interaction, human machine system. So there are all these terms out there. And this makes it difficult to find all the latest information because you may go into Google Scholar and you're like, I want the latest papers on this topic. And somebody's doing something directly related to what you're doing, except they're calling it human-robot synthesis or human-robot integration, and you're calling it human-robot interaction, and it's different. You know. So you got to do some different terms. Animals are often a good model for AI interaction. So we've got this human and this dog, this police dog, and they work really well together. And the police officer has a model of what the dog can do. I know this dog's capabilities. I know how to order them. And it's a limited scope, right? But it's very effective. I might have a falcon is another. You know, falcons have been operating as human assistants for hundreds of years. And then children, you can model this way too. Right? So if I'm going to have a child who's 5 years old help me cook something, I have to really talk to them differently. Like, okay, we're going to break an egg now and don't drop the shell in the bowl, right? So you have to add things for the children. So they are almost like an agent. And then I put this horse down here. This is a horse race from the United States. And I went to visit the horse race track, and I thought it was fascinating what a great relationship the jockey and the horse have. So the jockey can really tell how the horse is feeling, if they're upset, if they're feeling, you know, revved up. And the horse is not vocal, right? So it's not using speech. So there's a really effective human-agent interaction there with no speech at all. And they're looking at horse posture and that sort of thing. So we have these mental models of our partners, right? And I mentioned this briefly yesterday, so I'm not going to go into it, but I can tell you something, you know, I can tell you, oh, my dad had this stroke, and talk to him differently, and you're going to adjust your mental model. So here's an article. This is often deemed the first article about human-AI collaboration. It's from 1960. And Licklider is a famous MIT professor. And I thought it's worth looking at some of this text. So just look at it for a minute, try to read some text. When you're done reading, look back at me. I'll know. Okay. So I put some red here, in red ink, that I think is interesting. You know, humans are going to, so a human AI in the future, well, humans will set out the goals initially in the early years. It's like, okay, is that now? You know, is that now? Are we now in the early years? And then they will make approximate but fallible and leading contributions and evaluators. So this is what he's forecasting the humans will do once the AI is here, right? Here's another one. read this one. So what's interesting here is this is sometimes called the long tail, and this idea that there's low probability events and there's a lot of them. So let's say I'm making an autonomous vehicle, and the engineer says, well, what are the cases we have to handle? And the cases are, well, we have to handle driving on the highway with a lot of traffic. Okay, check. That's going to be a frequent case. And we have to handle driving on crowded rural streets with a lot of traffic. Okay, check. And there's a couple things, and those are going to be high in a graph of the number of things you have to deal with. But there's a bunch of other things you might have to deal with, like, okay, what if it's really foggy and you have 2 flat tires at the same time? Okay, that's really rare, but it's something that could happen. And so maybe we need to respond to that. So that's out in the long tail of infrequent, but it's a thing that could happen. And what if I have a duck cross the street in front of me and I don't want to hit the duck? That's really rare, but it might happen. So the long tail is you start out with the frequent things, and those you deal with those. And it's like if I deal with those, I highlighted here of the past. I was like, this is 1960. What's he mean of the past? Human machine systems of the past. I'm thinking he's mean like airplanes, maybe. Okay, last one. So did he get the future right? He's got these years. So I think it's funny in the first paragraph that he's pretty much like, yeah, I know there are these tech enthusiasts who are saying AI is going to conquer everything and be awesome. He's like, it's not worth arguing with those people. Just say yeah, and keep going. So I'm like, even in 1960 he says that. And then, we're going to work together. So he's in 1960. It's going to be 20 years before we even get any useful AI. And then it's 5 years to have symbiosis, and then 15 years to use the symbiosis. What do you think? Is this a correct description of what's happening now, or not? Or what's the symbiosis thing? Is this an even decent metaphor, or not so much? What do you think? You think it's what we're seeing now? Yeah, the symbiosis developing. We're trying to figure out how to work with AI. Right?
It's exponential. The development has been exponential, but then AI it was introduced much before, like in the military, I guess they were using it. So I guess it did take 10, 15 years to develop.
Yeah.
I would say instead of 1960, even if you put 2025, it would still be the same.
You could do which?
If you replace 1960 with 2025, it would still be the same.
Oh, right. Even it's taken longer. 2005, it would be the same sort of years, right? 25. Okay. So even currently, you're saying it's going to take some more years.
Right. So, will he be alive today to ask him, did he really mean this? What?
He's not alive today. Yeah. And the last, he has a caveat at the end. The 15 may be 10 or 500. So he doesn't really know about the technology. But I think it's worth being thoughtful. So he said some things in 1960 that were really prescient and impressive, right? About what the future would be like. Do you think there's anything you can say today about 10 years from now that would be true also? Right? You're saying no. You're like, world's changing too fast. No.
Sir, actually, before the boom of the AI, sir, everyone think that means we should develop a human computer machine which is operated by the human. But after the boom of the AI, everyone thinks that AI can do the work as a human do. So everyone means working on AI to build the system
Yeah, they're just going to use it, and we don't even
without a
need
human intervention.
we don't need the human anymore, right? So the things are changing so fast that I think it's harder to be confident that we could say things about what would happen, 60 years in the future, which is interesting. Okay. So let's look at adaptive automation. This is a concept from the military again, from before there was the AI that we think of today. But it's still useful today. So there's this idea that the system's going to adapt to what's going on. It's going to adapt to you, and it's going to adapt to the environment. And David Caber was a big player in this and said, hey, humans are really good at adapting. Like I'm in a fighter plane and the situation changes and I can adapt really quickly. And so can the systems do that too? They want computer systems to be able to adapt just as well. Jesse Chen from the US Army says, okay, if I'm going to have an agent working with me, I need to have 3 types of information from the agent to have good situation awareness. They always talk about a soldier has good situation awareness. And if you have situation awareness, that means you have information at 3 levels. One is what's going on right now. And number 2 is what is causing what's going on right now. And number 3 is can I predict the future? And so that's situation awareness normally, and I can apply it to these agents. Like, what is the agent doing right now? And there are some of these video games you can play where you're like, oh, I'm going to go on a campaign, and I'm going to get a wizard and an elf, and the wizard's sort of an AI agent, and I can deploy my wizard and say, hey, wizard, go get me this thing over there. And then I'm left wondering, like, is the wizard doing what I asked? How long is it taking? When is the wizard going to be back? And some of the better games are designed to tell you that information. What reasoning process to use, and you need to be able to predict. So if you're a partner and you say, hey, can you help me out with the literature review, you need to know that you're going to expect a decent literature review back. Like, you need to understand what that's going to do and be able to sort of predict the future. We talked about that already. And here's this adaptive systems framework that's by a paper by these folks. And you end up with perceiving and then selecting an adaptation and then choosing to act. So perceiving the world. Maybe the system changed, like you're running out of fuel. Maybe the world changed, like there's some bad guys that now have left. Maybe the task changed, like, okay, I'm going to switch your goals. Or the human change, I'm getting sleepy, something like that, right? So there's all these things that can change. And then you need some software in there to say, okay, I just saw 3 changes. What am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to have this agent take over this part of the human's job, and I'm going to add in another agent, and I'm going to automatically do this thing. And it's going to sort of do this big expert decision and adapt. And so here's some examples. If I'm a pilot, I can have adaptive flight displays, and they've actually experimented with things like in stress mode, if things are really going wrong, you might highlight the information that they think the pilots really need. So it used to be there were gauges and dials in the planes, and now a lot of planes have what they call glass cockpits, which is basically iPads or tablets, in the cockpit. And so you could have some gauges that maybe we don't care about the landing gear right now, but we really care about the altitude, so the altitude gauge gets really big, or it gets highlighted, or something like that. In soldiers, so Michael Dornick, I know, who was one of these authors, worked on a thing where the soldier's wearing an EEG hat, so it's kind of doing brainwave stuff. And they had, at that time, it's like a BlackBerry sort of pre-smartphone. And they would have messages coming in. And based on how stressed they thought the soldier was, they would hide lower priority messages. So it's like, okay, I'm going to help you prioritize. And you can imagine that going well or not, right? It might be like, oh, AI, you thought that was low priority, but it was actually not low priority, and now I missed my big thing. So that gets interesting. Oh yeah, this was a drone sort of deal. You can imagine I'm controlling a drone, and maybe the drone can see something that I can't see. The drone is kilometers away, but I can see something. The drone sees something coming, and it can maybe take over and make decisions. And I'm like, hey, what's my drone doing? So it needs to be good communication there. And then teachers in a classroom. Teachers in a classroom have a model of how their people are understanding. Right? I can look at your faces a little bit and see, are you understanding? Are you not understanding? And you're like, and so I have this constant model going. And whenever you're presenting or teaching, or if you're a theater person on stage, there's two things in your brain going on, right? One is you've got some information to convey, like you've got a script to play. And the other is like, are people getting it, right? And maybe you need to adapt. And so it's useful to think that you've got two of these processes going in your head, and that's why it's useful to practice talks. So if you're going to give a big talk, you want to practice it so the content stuff is not taking much cognitive load. You're just like push and play, and it's going. And you can use your cognitive load resources to monitor the audience and say, how are they doing, right? And this is true for politicians and all sorts of people who speak. Okay. This is just to say that this is not only me talking about this sort of thing. There are plenty of other groups talking about this. Microsoft has a whole team of people they hire called the HAX team, Human-AI Experiences. So they're not calling it HAT, they're calling it HAX. And of course, all these slides are available in Google Drive, if you want. But by photographing them, you're sort of pre-filtering, which is smart too, right? They have a HAX toolkit. So it's like, hey, you're going to design some software that's going to work closely with humans and it's AI, then you should follow our toolkit checklist. That's nice to have. And there's this really interesting paper that I think I put in the folder about, how do you do, like they're analyzing the usability of working with AI. So this is a little bit like, what can Alexa do? What's my mental model of Alexa? So they're saying when you're doing usability testing, people wonder, well, what is this system? What's this AI know and how does it think? And how do I communicate with it? I'm going to skip that. And some of you remember the double diamond from yesterday. So here faintly is the double diamond. And we're doing a user-centered design process. And so we're trying to figure out what are our users' needs and narrow it down to a big need and then figure out products. And so this article, Yang et al., talks about when you use human-AI interaction, this gets hard. Here are the reasons it gets hard. So this is a somewhat enlightening article because it's about how hard it is, but it's somewhat frustrating because they don't have answers, right? They're more like, we're going to lay out how hard this is. But if you have answers to their questions, you could be really innovative. You could be the ones coming up with the answers. So at all the stages of the diamond process, like, well, it's hard to articulate what AI can do. You get over here, it's difficult to communicate with the time, AI over time. And they did it for the user-centered process and also for a tech-driven process. So here's the same double diamond, but I'm tech-driven. Like I'm thinking about advancing the technology, and it also has these things about why it's hard. So people have been thinking about this even since 2020, right, when the AI was just kicking in. And this is an interesting little graph. So we have two axes. This is about sort of like the complexity of the AI. How many outputs am I getting? And this is about the capabilities. So the simplest thing are probabilistic systems that are saying like, okay, what's the weather tomorrow? Well, given the circumstances, the probability of rain is this. It's not like you wouldn't call it AI necessarily. And then we've got these adaptive systems that are saying, well, I've got my inputs, but I just saw some recent changes. I can give you new information, so it's a little smarter. And then you've got the evolving probabilistic systems that are like, oh, I'm learning over time. I've now got the entire weather database ever in my knowledge, and I've got some simulations of global weather, and then the evolving adaptive. So that's where we're heading. Right? We're good? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit more about teams and then get into a brief activity. And the activity is going to be related to come up with an equation to try to measure trust of either another human or an AI agent. So I'll give you more details, but I wanted to tell you about that as an activity because then maybe you'll listen differently as I'm talking. So there are different kinds of teams out there, right? I have some examples. I could have a team of professionals in an office, and maybe one's the marketing manager, one's the IT manager, and one's the product manager, and they have to buy a new cloud-based storage system. So, the IT person knows a lot about it, the others don't really care, they just need it done. So they're coming in, they're somewhat equals, and that's a very different kind of decision than, say, this team. Does anybody do this contest here? It's an activity with students where you get spaghetti and marshmallows or gumdrops, and you build a tower. Have you done this? Do people have spaghetti here? Maybe it's not. It's like Italian. It's like pasta. Okay. So it's hard pasta, right? And what we do a lot with the undergrads, I say, here's a bunch of pasta, long, straight rods, and here's little marshmallows or gumdrops or little soft things, and you have to build a tower, and you stick them together and build this tower. And I'll say you get 3 people and you get 7 minutes, build as high a tower as you can. And I've done this with students. It's like the first day of class, and you get a real measure of how good of a team people can be. Because some people will argue a lot and yell, and other people will just try things. And that's a very different kind of team, because you come to this team with no skills. You have no skills in building spaghetti towers, right? As opposed to a military team, it's very hierarchical. We were just talking about some of this. Very specialized skills, similar to a medical team, often hierarchical, very specialized skills. Basketball game, everybody can throw, everybody can shoot, but there's a little variation. So you have overlapping tasks, and that's interesting because your strategy might be like, oh, if she's here and I'm here, I'm going to do this now, but if it's reversed, I do this other thing. And then you have these distributed teams, like with people working together online. And there's different kinds of team tasks. So in the US, this is how garbage collection is working. I don't know, do they have these here, the trucks with the robot arms? So you put out your rubbish bin on the curb, and this truck drives by with the robot arm, and it's like, dumps it and puts it back. And it's a robot arm, and that means that this job is one of the most dangerous in the US because if you get in the way of the robot arm, you are hurt, right? And it's bad. So it's a little bit like a video game task. You could almost analyze that like you analyze your video games. What if your task is cure cancer? You're like, that's a really different task, right? It requires a team. You're not really sure how to cure cancer. You know some things to try, but it's very different than this team task where you've got 2 people doing the garbage. It's very well defined. I could say, here's a picture of the area of New Orleans that had a big flood. And I could say, your task is to fix the flood, like fix New Orleans. This is also a hard thing, like the cure cancer. And what's interesting here is you end up with these stakeholders with very different agenda. You're going to have the police chief who says one thing, and you're going to have the person who's worried about cows and horses and livestock who are running around. They're going to be worried about something. You're going to have the insurance companies who are worried about something. So all of these stakeholders have to get together. This is a task of assembly line for building a car, and it has a lot of interdependence, right? So if I do my job of installing the dashboard well, then you can do your job of putting the gauges in. But if I don't, I'm hurting your job. So that it's really tight interdependence. Here's a customer service center. You could consider this a team because the whole team may be evaluated on like, oh, everybody gets a raise this month because we got our numbers up. But it's very loosely interdependent. Like this guy can do his job really well, and this guy doesn't have to do as good a job. But maybe they still get raises. So it's loosely coupled. And I forgot. I have this mostly because this was a combine simulator that we built. So it's a combine chair with TVs around. You can farm your corn. And the task here is mentor the child and guide the child in doing something. So there's sort of this mentoring or teaching mode. That's a different kind of task as well because you have to model the people and figure out what they need. So if the question is in a company, should I put team A or team B on this new project? Maybe there's the team over there or there's the team over here. Which one's going to be better on my project? And it could be that team 1 here did really well on task A, And I saw team 1 do really well on task B. So maybe there's something about these people are a good team. And it doesn't really matter what you give them. I mean, maybe there's some tasks they wouldn't be good at, but on a lot of tasks, they're going to be good team. Whereas I've got team 2, and they're really good at this one task, but boy, they sure don't know how to do this other task. And so when you're thinking about this decision in the workplace, you sort of have to figure out which column you're in. Are you in a place where the team may be good at communicating, but they're not going to be good at this other task because it requires specific skills? I could say, oh, here's a really good cricket team. They work really together, but are they good at cooking a big meal together? And it's a different task. So let's look at human agent teams. And I could be a single human with one agent, like it's me and Alexa, or me, something, or me and Gemini. Or I could have multiple agents. I get Alexa and I got Gemini. Maybe I want both, because I want music in my background and I want help with my homework. I can have 2 people sharing an agent. And you get into interesting questions like, what if I'm a team and we each have Gemini? Should my Gemini know what your Gemini knows? Like, should we be able to link? So I can log on and be like, here's Copilot or Gemini or ChatGPT, and maybe I should be able to share with friends and have a team, and then all 3 of our ChatGPTs know about each other and share memory. And so then my ChatGPT can say, well, Upal said this last time, so you need to watch out for that. Don't you remember that? That was a thing on your team. Nobody's really talking about that yet.
When we're talking Gemini, I used to understand that Gemini across the world is the same. It's the same, like, is it?
You're saying, is it the same across the world?
I don't have answer.
So they vary a lot. You get issues like Siri on a watch is different than Siri on a phone, is different than Siri in your desktop, because they have different levels of smarts. And they will do different behaviors because there's the cloud, and some of it's in the cloud. But then there's also things like a company, like at Iowa State, for example, we've bought all the Microsoft things. So we have Microsoft Copilot. And our version of Copilot at Iowa State is protected to just Iowa State. So it knows all the stuff from Copilot, but I can feed it information about my Iowa State projects, and that won't be public. So it's like got a little wall around it so that the people at the other universities can't see my stuff. See what I mean?
So if I use Copilot here and you also use Copilot, we would still get different answers from the same.
We might get different answers, yeah. Especially if I fed it more information about my work at Iowa State. Yeah. And you can do these things, like it's pretty easy to go and to add agents. I can, was I telling you about the avatar posters? The poster avatar people? Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty easy to feed an agent information. You can say, like there's a website called Zapier, which does this, Zapier. And you can go to Zapier and it's like, which agent do you want? Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever, you pick ChatGPT. And then it's like, what do you want your agent to know? And you can copy paste information into a text box. And all of a sudden it knows all that. Then you can say, what's your audience? You can say, I want my agent to talk to middle school kids and to sound like a pirate. And then your agent will always sound like a pirate talking to middle school kids who knows this information. And then you can do that in like 10 minutes, right? Okay, so we talked a little about all these times. There's this talk about, is an agent a tool or a teammate? So an agent could be a tool, like Alexa is more like a tool, like play me this music, what movie is playing nearby, what temperature is it outside? It's just a tool for me, information tool. But I can get a complex agent like, hey Alexa, you know the bands I like. Like, I can't do this yet, but ideally, I would say, you know my favorite bands, which ones are playing in a 100-mile radius, get me tickets, that are a good price, but not too expensive. So one of the papers I worked on for research was, as we started to think about agents and what they do, we realized that there are a lot of video games that have agents in them. And there are a lot of these video games where you're playing a role in the video game and you have characters that can do things for you, like AI agents, like help you fight or something like that. So we went through and wanted to analyze all the video games we could find that have autonomous agents and that are human agent teams. And we came out with these following characteristics of human agent teams. And some of these are popular in the literature outside us, and some others are just us. So level of automation is something you'll find in the literature broadly. In cars, they talk about there's 6 levels of automation, but in like airplanes, it's more like 10 or 12. And if you have high automation, the agent can act on its own and take initiative. If you have low automation, the agent might be like, hey, you ought to do this. Type of interaction, control mode, is it like a coworker or a servant? That's more of a term from us. The timing, the interdependence is an interesting thing. And then we propose these agent types. So here's an example of agent types. Oh no, first here's automation. So here's 10 levels of automation. So in the middle, I think doesn't it add a thing? Yeah. So there's opt-in or opt-out. Opt-out means the agent is going to take initiative and do something unless you say stop. Opt-in is it's going to recommend things, but you have to opt in. So, the top is the agent's just ignoring the human. Okay. Here's a Madden 2021 football game. And in this, it's going to loop here, so we'll see a couple examples. But you see 3 kinds of agents. So here's the football, and you're carrying the ball, and right there it says juke. It's like you should juke now, which means sort of like, like do this sort of thing. So this thing is recommending, it's like an advisor. So let's watch for the juke again. They throw the ball, this has the ball, and it's like a little blue thing, like you should do this. But now this part is when it goes back to the dashboard, it's the planner. The planner is like, well, I'm an expert coach, and I think your next play should be this play. So here, coach suggestions. So it very briefly has 3 plays. So that's a different kind of agent, right? And then the last kind of agent is just all the other players. Those are the actors. I mean, all of those football players are under AI control except yours. So that's another kind of agent. So we ended up categorizing these kinds of agents and tried to put in the characteristics of each one. Here's another example. So this is a game, and you have to sort of shoot the bad guys in the tanks, and watch down here. You've got some people down here. And this is a single player, so you're controlling this whole troops. So it's like you move them, and they follow you. And then you're going to switch perspectives here in a minute, because there's like a tank over here. So now you're on the street, and you're like, I'm going to go switch. Here's the tank. Okay. So this is another form of human agent team, right? I've got these other agents that are following me. And what we can do is analyze the game to show how is it helping me understand what my agents are doing. Like that's the key thing you want to know. I'm on a team. How do I know what my teammates are doing? How do I know what my AI teammates are doing? Well, here I can just sort of see them. That's great. Maybe I need to know some status down here. Like here's my health status. Maybe I need to have my health status for my teammates too. How are they doing? And so you end up with research areas that are things that sound very non-engineering. Like we talked about trust. There's also etiquette research. Like what should the etiquette of ChatGPT be? Like right now we've talked about it sort of flattering, and that's in the past 6-8 months. They've added that in. And I think it's a competitive thing, right? Because if I use ChatGPT and it makes me feel good about myself, then maybe I want to keep using it instead of Claude or Gemini, because maybe it doesn't, I don't know. Yeah. So here was our study where we analyzed all these games. We had like 88 potential games. We review the games, get it down to 13 games. We analyze them. We have themes and then design patterns. Design patterns are sort of recurring patterns that we see across games. And so we ended up with these gray patterns, 25 different patterns that we would see. So when you're starting out your campaign, there's often some pre-planning about what do I have in my inventory, where am I going to position myself. And so what we saw across multiple games, all 13 games, is they would have user interfaces to do this. So our question was like, what user interfaces are helpful when you are doing all these human AI tasks? And the Air Force is paying us to do this because the Air Force has software that manages drones and surveillance. And it looks like it's a 1990s video game that was really badly designed. It looks terrible. And so they say they want to update their software. And they're like, go get the best of the best from the current game world. And so, example of design patterns from Fortnite, for example, okay, most of them are going to have a compass for navigation. Most of them are going to have a mini map to help you know where you are, right? So those are just examples. Okay. So here's what comes with the major challenges of human agent team stuff. One is measuring things. You'll have this continuing measuring thing from me about how do I measure stuff that sounds fuzzy. And then authoring systems. So if I'm authoring those video games, I need to program agents that will know how to react to a variety of circumstances. So can I think of all possible circumstances? I don't know. Maybe I can, maybe I can't, depending on the domain, right? So let's say you want to book and so I want to introduce the concept of service design to you as a useful framework. How many people have heard of service design? Okay, so a couple people. All right, so there's product design, service design, right? And services are like, I go to the hospital, I get healed. So they did a service for my body. I book a flight and I flew, but I don't walk away with a new product, right? I just had a service. And so there's this idea of touch points. So if I'm going to go book a flight, there's all the touch points. I go to the website to book a flight. I check in at a kiosk. I talk to a human. I go and look at where my flight is. Maybe I read a magazine in the plane. I sit in the plane. I have to find my seat and talk to a flight attendant. The whole design of the airport is part of the experience as well. And then I get my baggage. I may look at the app. And I can talk on the phone line. All of these are touch points. And I have good service design, then ideally I have a good experience that's consistent across all of them. So the touch point idea comes up a lot with the human agent teaming. Like, how am I going to interact with the AI? I have these different kinds of touch points. And then the other ideas in service design is this front stage, backstage, and infrastructure. So in a theater, I've got the people seeing the front actors, and I've got in the back, there's people controlling lights and props and sound. And then in the very back, I've got people with like payroll software and who's showing up today to work. And similarly in restaurants, I've got the front stage where the food comes out. I get the food experience. I've got the backstage kitchen. And in the very back, I've got refrigerators and inventory and payroll. So now let's imagine that same concept for human agent teaming. I want to create the ultimate AI textbook for students to learn from. Maybe. So I've got this student learning online, and maybe they're going to use something like Comigo, or they're going to use some cool AI tool. So what am I going to program on that? Maybe I need something of like, hey, if the student says this, then say good job. But if the student does this, I say, well, you should try focusing on this thing. How are you going to lay that out? And are you laying that out explicitly, or are you letting an agent like an LLM just sort of deal and take care of it? Maybe you say, here's the good answers, here's the bad answers, smooth it over, come up with the stuff in between for me. And this is what I would call the authoring of the system. And the hard thing is that it's a linear experience, right? The human is having a linear experience over time. I'm interacting with this agent, but the whole back end computationally is very branching, like all the possibilities that might happen. And as an example of this, if you go to a museum exhibits are typically not linear. So the museum exhibit, whoever designed this exhibit, maybe it's on dinosaur fossils, had some goals for you to learn. Like the exhibit is a learning experience. But they need to have you learn these goals no matter what order you walk through it, and no matter which direction you go. So they want you to walk away with the idea of like, oh, fossils are constantly changing and we need to learn about them all the time. And dinosaurs were sure big, or something like that. They have learning goals, and you're going to maybe experience them in multiple ways as you go through. So I think exhibit design, there's a whole field of exhibit design, and I think it has something to tell us about these hat designs as well, because of the non-linearity. Okay, so there's the agents. Oh yeah, and I have this example over here with the team tutor. So we have built tutoring systems where we have different people doing a team. We did a military example where we had 2 surveillance spotters. They were standing on top of a building and you were supposed to watch for bad guys running around the village. and then there was a person with binoculars in a tower. And so it's like one of the spotters would say, hey, I think I see a guy who might be suspicious. Hey, tower person, go look at this person. It's at 2 o'clock, tower. And the tower person would say, okay, I looked at him, he's okay. And we would have a tutor agent for each of them. And then we had a team tutor that would say things like, y'all are not very good at acknowledging communications. Y'all need to say more times when you communicate. You need to say acknowledge, over. You need to say these sort of things. So it's a team tutoring thing. So we were one of the first people in my group to build an actual team tutor with multiple agents for everybody on the team and a supervisory agent. Okay, so now let me switch now to I'm switching to the part that we would be doing in the afternoon. So this is going to be the activity. About trust in AI. So first I have more text from the past. Creators of media should be outlawed. They pretend to know things, but they know nothing. They are imitators, and they're the worst. Anyone know who said this, or when they said this? Where does this writing come from? Any guesses?
When AI was just starting out.
Sorry, which?
When AI was starting out.
Maybe when AI was starting out? Older. I'll go older. What were you saying? When? What?
1984.
Maybe, George Orwell, 1984, maybe. That's a nice idea. Pranav might know, too. Didn't you mention him some philosophy background? Didn't you have some philosophy background?
Yeah.
Okay, so you might recognize this. I don't know.
There was recently a same kind of article written by some linguistics student suggesting these are copying agents, AI, like that only, it works like that only. And I want them to do macro rules like washing and doing that. So there is one this, and also I forgot there is surrealist, I think the surrealist Sartre or Simon Beauvoir also suggested this. And
So multiple people have said things like this, right, about this. And just to give a flavor, this was from Plato, 390 BC, right? So it's like way back, people are worried about the media. They're worried about deep fakes and everything. Okay, here's another writer. So because we've got the word information and we got the word universities, it's not as old as Plato, but it's still old. This is pretty much like change the universities or get rid of them, because now we have books. We used to not have books for everybody, but now we have books for everybody, so you don't need universities. Right? And people need all the full information to throw off the despotism. So a lot of, this person would probably think if you said, hey, there's this internet where you can get any information you want, they would say, oh, great, no more despotism, not realizing that we have now conflicting information on the internet. Okay, so this was from this guy, Bucesimus Knox, 1700s in the UK. So these concerns are old. This is about trust, right? So here's your assignment, and I'm going to talk some about it more, but you're going to propose a trust score. We're going to do it in groups of 2 or 3 again. So first, think of an interaction with a human that makes your trust increase or decrease with that human. Like, oh, I did this with a human and my trust got better or got worse. And then 2 interactions with an AI agent that maybe makes you trust it more or less. And then this is the hardest part. Then I'm going to suggest you propose a way to measure trust somehow. But it may just be one piece of trust. Like I think you need weeks to come up with like the whole all trust. But you can just measure a piece of it. And then try to use your equation to go back and score your 3 interactions. And so let me give you some examples. So first, what do I mean by an AI agent? Here are at least 10 kinds of agents that I could argue are AI agents, right? The interactive walkthrough is you open up some software you've never used, and it's like, welcome, your save button is over here, and you hit next, and the little thing moves, and it's like, and this is where you change your settings. And then there's the smart form fillers that are like, oh, it's Stephen again, and I'm filling out the form, and it auto-fills Stephen in my address. And there's the old chatbots before there was LLMs, right, that are like, what's my bank account? Path recommendation agent is more, it's analyzing what you're doing in a website. It's like, you probably want to click, do your invoice now. AI search assistants are both, that can be, when I type something like camera, it's going to decide that I probably want to buy a camera. So it's going to give me hits on buying a camera as opposed to fix the camera. But if I type fix the camera, it's like, okay, I'm going to give you hits. So it's a little bit of using AI to make assumptions about what I'm searching for. Context-aware behavior is a little bit similar to the path recommendation. It's looking for my behavior, and it's going to say, oh, it looks like you're stuck. Looks like you need to do X. Predictive analytics is more about business and data dashboards. You have these data dashboards. It's like, oh, in your next business quarter, you might consider selling this product because of its score so far. The voice assistants are like Siri or Alexa. Multi-agent system, this is a thing in our list, but I'm not sure of a good example of it. I think it's just this idea that I'm working in a system and there's different kinds of agents that do different roles. And then we've got the LLMs that can be embedded like everywhere. So, and this arrow about less smart versus more smart, it's really rough. It's not really linear because some of these are different kinds of categories. So that's when I say back on here, think of 2 interactions with an AI agent. Your AI agent could be any of this, right? I realized I thought I had recommender systems in here. So, Amazon will be like, oh, you bought this product? You might want this product. Or Spotify. Do people use Spotify here? Yeah, okay. So Spotify will like, hey, you might like this song. Huh. Maybe that's under context-aware behavior agent. But yeah, the recommender systems are in there too.
So, superficially, how do we understand the difference between LLM and non-LLM?
I think the LLMs, yeah, good question. The non-LLMs have somebody programmed them with a set of questions they can answer. Like they can answer, what's my bank balance? I would like to make a withdrawal. They came out with banks a lot first, or travel agencies. They know how to say, how cheap is the flight to Delhi or something. So it's pre-programmed with the questions it can answer. And the LLMs are not. They're for free-flowing, and they just have the whole knowledge of the internet available. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I think in terms of trust, the non-LLMs are a little more trustworthy. They're not hallucinating. They're frustrating because you're like, I want to stop my certificate of deposit and restart it in a week. And it's like, that's a weird case, and so it doesn't cope with it. And it's like, I don't know what you mean. So they're frustrating that way, but they don't make mistakes, right? They will tell you that, like, I don't understand, but they won't make mistakes. Like the LLMs will just tell you, like, yeah, mangoes are purple, yeah. And you're like, what? Yeah. Okay, so I asked you to make a trust score, and you're like, what's a trust score? So we talked before in another class about how there's stuff you want to measure. Like I want to measure how much these humans trust this agent. How much do you trust ChatGPT? But I can't put electrodes in your brain, so I'm going to have to come up with a proxy, like some equation or is there something I can count? And so here's some examples. Maybe I decide with Alexa that I want to measure something about familiarity. My level of trust in Alexa is about how much Alexa's using knowledge it has about me, because if it uses more knowledge it knows about me, then I trust it more, because it knows me. And so I decide that I count up all of its responses, and I divide out the number of times it uses facts about me. And I call that familiarity. And so I might have a transcript where I'm like, hey, what's on my calendar for tomorrow? And well, you have 5 meetings. The first is this, da, 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 da. So it used 2 facts about me, and it's going to score higher on this trust measure, right? I'm not saying like this is the right answer or a great thing at all. You might say, well, that's a terrible measure of trust, Stephen. I don't like that at all. I'm like, great. But it's an example of an equation that you could decide measures something. Or you could decide, I don't like that equation. I want to do something else. But this is an example of applying it, right? I have an equation, and then in your scenarios that you're writing up, maybe you have a little dialogue, like a transcript like this, and then you tag it up and you score it.
Here it's like 2 by 3.
That's right. Here it'd be 2 by 3. So I've got total responses. Well, yeah, I could do, if I count sentences, maybe I got 3 sentences, and 2 out of the 3 sentences use facts about me. Yeah. Here's a different one. Maybe I decide that in the military, they always teach you to say acknowledge afterwards, after some communication. So you tell me something and I say acknowledge. And so I'm going to decide good military communication. Maybe that's only the US military. Anyway, we're always saying acknowledge. I decide that good communication is percentage of times you say acknowledge after their communications. So if I say, hey, you need to transfer something, and then I say acknowledge, and then I say, somebody else says again later, transfer this thing, and I say acknowledge, then I've got 100% here. The reason I use this example is because timing could matter. You might decide, well, actually, this is not 100% because I didn't say acknowledge in here before the transfer, right? I got like transfer, acknowledge. So you could say, oh no, they messed that up. So if you think that's a mistake, then my formula is probably not the best, right? But if you think that's fine, the formula could work. So I hope this illustrates the idea that it's hard to come up with formulas that are great, but give it a shot because it's an interesting activity to try. And then we're going to go back and we're going to all add them onto this Google Doc. So this takes you to a Google Doc where you can add in your stuff. Does that seem clear? Also, I think you got the message from, you sent out to the chat the other Google Doc to add your stories. So we don't have time today to go into the speculative fiction, but I hope you'll add them and then we'll read each other's and talk about them tomorrow. Okay, do you want to do this? Do you want me to assign groups again? Or you want to pick your own groups today for this? You want what?
Assign the group.
Assign the groups. Okay, so we have, you want to be in a group? Yeah? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You gonna do this?
Sir, I will do individually.
Okay. Group is harder. It's a better test, if you want.
No, sir, tomorrow I will come with my roommate and we will do.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we're going to have 6 groups of 2 and 1 of 3. And so you're 1. You say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you're 1. You're 4. He's 4. 5, 6, 1. Okay, all the 1s, raise your hand. Get together. Maybe over by him, there's more chairs. 2s, who's a 2? So you all get together. It's just 2 of you. 3s, okay, you all get together. 4s, you all get together. 5s, okay. 6s.
So you have to do right now?
Yeah. We're going to do it right now.
I thought you were going
I'm
to
sorry.
assignment.
No, I get that. Do you want to do it with a group now?
No, I can't.
Okay, so why don't you join the 2s? The 2s, you can join with them. Who's a 2? Okay, so join those 2 guys. Okay, so let's do this for, this is going to take you longer than you think. Okay, go for it. Yeah. What?
So, what you do from plateaus? So, there was a person, I'm at 2-3 years old. So, she was the same thing on the plateau road, and I asked if I
Oh.
been to plateau over. I asked a lot of like plateau, then they call it salmon juice. Never been to any of them. But she wrote something which is very similar.
Very similar to Plato. Okay. Cool. Cool. Send me that. Okay. Okay, why don't you move to be near your group people. Yeah, go. Yeah. Be sure to introduce yourself if you don't know everybody's name.
So let me bring my laptop.
Yeah, that'd be great. Do you understand? Yeah. What's your thought? Do you understand what it's asking?
Yeah.
Okay, you're good. Okay. You okay?
I didn't get it said that easy. So the second task,
Yeah.
could you please explain a little bit the assignment to me?
Yeah, on the second one, so there are these different kinds of AI agents,
ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek.
or any of those 10 that I've been over. Even like
I
a,
have chose the 10th point because ChatGPT I have used a lot, so I know about ChatGPT.
so that's okay, unless you can't
That's
think
okay
of,
now, or I
unless
have to
you,
choose one from first. Or
no, you can do any of them.
any out of 10.
Yeah.
I chose the 10th one. Okay.
Yeah.
Then
And then think about an interaction that you've had that makes you trust it less, like maybe a ChatGPT lies to you or tells you something that's false, and so then you trust it less.
okay, so I have
And
to have a convo with ChatGPT, but not related to facts or something. I have to be emotional or something that is situational based totally.
I mean, you can do it however you want. It has no
That is
requirement
the
here.
way. Na? Acha, I can do that way.
You can do it that way if you want.
Okay.
And it can, any sort of conversation you might have that makes your trust increase or decrease. And then you are going to write out that conversation. And we need 2 examples. And then when you get to part 3, you're going to propose some way to measure the trust.
Okay.
And then on number 4, you're going to go score it. So you're going to say, oh, my measure of trust is something about how many times it does this versus this. And I scored this thing on ChatGPT, this conversation I had, and that makes me really hate it and not trust it. Or this makes me really trust it because I did this and this and this. That makes sense?
Got it. And the deadline for the project is tomorrow 2 p.m. Or
Um,
today 2
No, I mean start now, but then tomorrow 2 p.m. Yeah,
tomorrow till tomorrow. 2
yeah, yeah.
Got it.
Again, I'm going to make another announcement. I don't know if it matters. So I'll just say that you can pick from any of these. You know, I just said these are different AI agents. You don't have to do them all. You can pick from any of these you want. These are just different kinds of AI agents. And then the other thing is, ideally, your trust score would work just as well for your human AI trust as it would for the human trust, right? Because you're going to have some interaction. You're like, oh, I asked the person to meet me tomorrow and they didn't show up, and that decreased my trust in this person. And then I asked ChatGPT to do X and it didn't work, and I did, decrease my trust or whatever. I don't know. So, yeah. So then and this is just like all the other activities. This is due tomorrow afternoon at 2, but start now because you'll have questions. Okay. Any other questions now?
Do you have a class today at afternoon or do you have a meeting today?
Yeah, there is no afternoon class today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So will Mohit sir take over from you?
No, there's nothing this afternoon.
He said that there is a class in afternoon.
So it's not just ChatGPT, right? It's also like recommender systems on Spotify that recommend a song.
Generative AI and agentic AI.
Well, that's number 10, but all the 1 through 9 are not that. So like if Spotify recommends a song, that's a type of AI too.
Spotify.
Yeah, like you know Spotify, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Spotify would be number 6.
Context aware behavior.
Yeah, like it would be, or Amazon recommends a product to you, that'd be like 6.
Better user experience recommendations.
Yeah, ideally, if they're good recommendations, yeah. So there's different kinds of AI. So you can pick any kind of AI. It doesn't have to be an LLM. Yeah. Or it could be Alexa, you know, Siri, one of these. Which one?
So these are voices that.
Yeah, those are like the voice assistants, like number 8.
So what is this difference between context aware behavior agent and predictive analytics agent?
The predictive analytics is more like data dashboards for business, and you've got all your data about your car sales for the past year, and it's
From previous data
we're
we are
predicting and
predicting.
forecasting. Yeah, it's like, hey, you should sell this car next year. It's going to sell well, or something like that.
So these are useful in businesses.
Yeah.
It's a multi-agent system.
That one, it came up in a list. I got this list from a text, and I'm not sure about the multi-agent system, honestly. I think it's more that
Agentic AI side of things, like
I think it's more for military context, where like I'm trying to control 3 drones, and the drones all have their own AI, but they're not talking to each other. So it's like, yeah.
Sir, in China, we can take an example. Sir, in China, there is a drone show.
Mm.
Lots of thousands of drones are.
Yeah. For lights and all that. Yeah.
That can be a multi-agent.
That could be. That's a good one. Yeah. So these are some AI flavors you can pick from. So it's not just, ChatGPT. And then here are 2 examples of a trust score that I'm not saying are good examples. I'm just saying they are examples. One is maybe I decide that Alexa is going to be good if it has more facts about me when it answers. So then I look at all of its answers and I say, how many times did it reference facts about me? And I'm going to use an equation like, the more the better. You
how
see what I mean?
fast it get trained. Is this
Not for the training, but when it answers, like I'm just talking to Alexa, and
while talking you are training, I guess. While talking with Alexa, it gets trained by talking, knowing your behavior, and then responsive,
so sometimes,
responsive next answer on the based of previous behavior of the user.
so sometimes.
Sometimes.
I wouldn't worry about that though, right? Because sometimes Alexa's taking your data as training, and sometimes it's just responding. Like you say, what's the weather or whatever, it just, we don't know. But that's an example of, I try to have an equation to measure some form of trust, and then I count up and I score it, right? And then here's I'll wait on that, yeah. And I'm not saying this is good or true or anything, right? I'm just like, here's an example of I'm trying to score something about trust, and maybe it's going to work or maybe it's not. You good? And here's another example. In the military, they'll say, they want you to say acknowledge after you talk. So you might say, good communication is every communication is acknowledged. So I'm going to have the percentage of communications that have acknowledge after them. Maybe that's a good measure of communication. And so then where it gets interesting is if I have one soldier says transfer, transfer, and the other one says acknowledge, acknowledge, is that okay? Or is it really like the equation needs to be, you need to say acknowledge within 5 seconds, right? So currently the formula would say, that's good, 100%. But if you want it within a certain time, we have to change the formula to be like number of acknowledges within 5 seconds. So that's just an example of these equations. Okay. So now you've heard what everybody else heard, I think. And then that's the Google Doc where you put your work. Okay. Yeah. Some of the students were like, Prof Mohit's going to come teach something, so we should show up. And I was like, I haven't heard that, but I don't know, whatever.
You want to take your tutorial? Take it out?
No, I'm okay. I don't need it.
One second.
I'm okay with what you said. You, you know,
You have done your masters.
Yeah.
So how many of you do not know the ergonomics basics? I guess there's four for sure. You also do not know. There's you one, two, three, four. Here and this side. You know ergonomics little bit?
And I just know the superficial basics of that, how to calculation, very basics.
Okay, because this is a bit application oriented. Okay, so I'll teach about the ergonomics very fundamental things, very basic. Okay, maybe like what you have studied might be in your initial classes. So from that I'll start. Okay, maybe I don't know whether it will be useful for you or not.
Was there group photo or something? Okay. There may be a group photo.
So you mentioned this trust. We are trying to discuss this trust. So like when we go through literature, trust is almost seen like a philosophical concept and it goes somewhere else. In terms of philosophy of they have a concept of trust.
That's like the psychology side, but there's also this behavior side of
So
what are the trust
like
behaviors.
you had shown some slides where you mentioned someone has done some paper or article on trust.
Yeah.
So you would recommend that to understand it in terms of practical,
Right.
measurable,
Right.
like metric way of. So I'll go.
Yeah.
That is a paper that.
Yeah. Anything by Lee. If it's about trust and it's by Lee, Lee is good. And Lee has a couple papers. I think there was Lee and C, and then there was Meyer and Lee, I think. And I think they're both in here.
The one you sent in the readings.
Let's see. Do we have. Oh. Do I not have it in there? Oh, here's a Lee. Well, that's Lee and safety. Okay, I don't have actually the Lee papers in here. I'll go put those in there.
Yeah.
You don't need them for this necessarily, though. I mean, this is more casual, but
Like the why that question also came is like it depends on the setting where we are trying to measure trust, and trust can have different components. Like here it was familiarity, and where somewhere we are just looking at the factual correctness of the interaction, or like now we'll have to understand trust in which facet or which.
I mean, you can pick the facet. I think it's something like, let's say you're at a company and the company says, oh, we need a new AI for our software, and be sure customers trust it, because I don't want some AI agent that people don't trust. So then if they say that to you, you're going to need to have in your head, like, how am I going to measure that trust? So then you got to come up with something. Does that make sense?
Yes, and we need a some starting point or some frame of reference.
Well, you can make it up then, right? But it's about a task. It's about the task.
Like first we have to scribble down the experiences or interactions, right? So from there, from that interactions or experiences, we have to identify how we are going to measure that trust
Right.
or distrust.
Right. Yeah. So you might even just, I mean, it's easiest to start with anything like brainstorm an example of some interaction with another human that made you decrease trust or increase trust. And then you look at, well, what happened there? Oh, the key thing was that they said this under this circumstance or something like that, right?
So when you came to India,
Yeah.
you must have come several times.
This is my first time.
So what was your trust? You must have met several people across the country when from that point where you entered India till here.
Oh,
What
yeah,
was
right.
your-
Oh, yeah, good question. So there was when I was in Delhi, I got an Uber from the airport to a restaurant, and that was great, and that was fine. And I trusted the guy more because I didn't. In the U.S., when you get Uber, the Uber app pays for the ride. Like when you accept the ride, you pay instantly. But this guy was like, "Oh, I take cash only, so you can't pay in the app. You have to pay me cash." So at the end of the ride, he's like, "Where's my cash?" And I'm like, "I don't have any cash." He's like, "Well, I'll take you to an exchange place and you can get cash." So he was happy to do that, and he was patient while I got cash. So I thought that made me trust him a little more because he understood that I made a mistake. I didn't know how Uber worked. So he gave me the benefit of the doubt. He was waiting for me to get the cash, right? But then, and so I trusted him more. But then later I was going to get my phone died, so I couldn't get an Uber back to the airport hotel. So then I'm like, well, I'll just go find a cab. So I go stand on the street. This guy comes by. I'll take you to the hotel. And then, no, different guy. And so I get in, and I should have said, how much will it be?
That scam we all fail.
Yeah, exactly. But then I didn't do that. So then I get there, and he's like 500. I'm like, what? I'm like, no way,
You just paid, so you knew the actual rate.
Yeah, I had just paid the Uber guy. I was like 200, and I'm like, okay, it should not be 500. He's like, well, I'm like, okay.
This kind of scam is happening all over India.
Yeah.
I have also fallen for the same kind of scam. He was like, just get in. I will get you to the destination. When I got to the destination, I say, how much they have? So he will take like, will be around 250. The more I can give by the public transport cost by 10 rupees.
Yeah, right.
So you're asking like 25 times more than the.
Yeah.
So that
So that decreases my trust in the cab drivers, right? Yeah. So maybe that helps you. I don't know if you can put that into an equation. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Are you having okay? Doing okay?
Yes.
So let's start.
So for the first one means if suppose you are means I am a seller and you are a buyer.
Sailor and a
Buyer. You are a buyer.
buyer,
I am
seller and buyer. Yeah.
seller, I am buyer. And so suppose if I am marketing my product to you,
Mm.
so then you can understand whether I am means lying or telling truth.
Yeah, sure.
So if I am lying about my product, then sir, your means trust score will decrease. Means sir, you
For
will.
long term.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
And sir, if means you generally know that I am talking means I am talking real about the product. These qualities are genuine. Then sir, you we means there is a trust between us.
Trust score increase.
Yeah,
For
that's
long.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
Those are good
The
examples.
human to human interaction.
That's right. And I would make it specific, like I'm selling food or I'm selling saris or something. Like have a specific example. And do I realize you're lying later when I get home, or do I realize you're lying while I'm still in the store?
Sir, means
You know?
Both, depends on person to person. How
Yeah.
smart he is. How
Yeah. Yeah.
means that you can lie after using a product. Means you can assume that he is maybe lying. Means that he is lying after using a product. You are sure. Then sir, that successful means negative.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
and sir, and second means AI agent. Sir means suppose I give a prompt to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It means a specific question I give to ChatGPT and it may give answer, but not up to the mark that I was expecting.
Okay. Yeah.
Satisfaction level
Oh,
of the
okay.
user.
Yeah.
Satisfaction, my satisfaction level decreases. Then I means at means
Then
I
we have to re-enter the prompt. Then again re-enter the prompt. That's how the trust score decreases.
That's interesting because then your measure of trust is a little bit like number of prompts you have to do to
Yes,
get what you
exactly.
want. Something that's a nice
We
idea.
want a measurable metrics.
Yeah.
So I guess satisfaction level is the good measure.
That's great. I like that a lot.
Trust is basically emotion, not anything.
Yeah, that's
One
good.
of the emotion trust.
Yeah.
and
Before you were here, we went through a bunch of concrete behaviors that lead to trust or mistrust. Yeah.
And sir, if it gives us a personalized idea, means it see my chat history, and sir, it gives me answer that I was thinking according to the AI. Then sir, my satisfaction level increase. That yes, the answer is according to my thinking.
Yeah.
For example, if you ask to ChatGPT for validation, it will always say right, right, right. But there's a problem is this confirmation bias came out. Confirmation bias means what we are thinking
Yeah.
is true,
Right.
and we neglect the other aspect which causes us long-term problems.
That's right. That's great. Good
Basically,
insight.
While I do user research now, I took questions from ChatGPT and asked, but I make sure that I will not suffer from confirmation bias.
If you can avoid it, yeah. So those are all great examples. I would write this up. I mean, you're almost done, right? Like you could write this up and then just try to be a little specific. So instead of saying I asked ChatGPT something and it didn't give me enough, like give me an example. Like I asked ChatGPT for why are Pakistan and India fighting, and it gave me 2 paragraphs, and that's not enough, or something. I don't know. Yeah, but just give a specific example. Okay, cool. Y'all doing okay?